Welcome to another Patron pre-show. Gather round, everyone.
Gather round in your New Year's Eve fine rate, because of course you're actually seeing this on New Year's Day, and given the wealth and power from which all of you come, I know that you've just made it into the studio from your New Year's Eve party.
Well, not necessarily. They get early access, Charles. I might put this up tonight. You know, um,
Tonight,
yeah, or
well,
tomorrow. They're not gonna see
they
on.
should be wearing
Yeah,
they should be wearing their formal wear.
yeah, definitely, definitely.
The I mean, obviously, these are people who 50 years ago, okay, would have been in the ballroom of the Waldorf Astoria, ringing in the new year with the music of Guy Lombardo and his Royal Canadians.
No, formal wear all day, every day. Am I right?
You bet, except when they're wearing costumes in certain holidays. But yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Morning coats, tailcoats, and the ladies, don't get me started on the beauty of their gear.
Yes. Um. Okay.
You seem somewhat unimpressed by that.
I
So, are you making New Year's resolutions or what?
New Year's resolutions? No, I think my standard line is I just try to be a good person all the time.
That's beautiful. It's like being It's like being spiritual and not religious. Great, thanks.
Okay. What about you? What's your resolution?
I don't make New Year's Eve New Year's resolutions.
Why?
I couldn't deal with the guilt of breaking them.
No?
No. Do you think I'm going to hand myself that kind of a burden? What kind of a moron do I look like? Don't answer that question. However, I have a question for you.
Okay.
We are this is the seventh day of Christmas.
Yes.
How was your first day of Christmas? How was your Christmas Eve?
Oh, it was good. Let's see. First day of Christmas. No, I got a lot of good things. It's funny, I when I was a kid, I always thought, oh, clothes. This is so lame. But now it's like, ooh, wow, clothes. I really need some clothes. So that's funny. But we went to see well, this was before Christmas, but we went to Hastings Ranch to see all the lights, all the the neighborhood. Everyone always drives around there. Have you ever done that?
What's that?
Go to Hastings Ranch, drive around.
Oh, sure,
Yeah.
sure.
I don't know if the houses are as consistent as they used to be in terms of having lights, but there's always some whoppers there. I told my wife, I don't know if you watch a lot of Hallmark movies, you'll know what I'm about to say, but some of these Christmas houses, the lights are so over the top that I say that's the Hallmark villain house because it's like it almost loses the spirit of Christmas in a sense because it's so electronic. It's hard to explain. Like there are, um, it's like a light show. It literally is like a light show. There's so many houses. There's like a grid. It's almost like if you went to Las Vegas and some of the light things they show there, it's like that's what they're doing. It's so over the top. Um, but it's an attraction. So
Well, yeah, I used to go to it. I love the two Christmas tree lanes on Santa Rosa and Altadena,
yeah,
which is the biggest of the two.
yeah,
Uh, and that, I mean, to me, it's like the gateway to Elfland.
yeah.
It's it's incredible. And the other one I like very much, although it's quite a bit smaller, it's very much shorter. It's only a couple of blocks. Is on St. Albans Road or St. Albans Drive in San Marino,
Mm.
off Huntington Drive. And if that weren't enough, there's the former show, now unfortunately one with the ages, at the Bailey Mansion in Pasadena,
Mm. Yeah.
which used to be a big deal. But there's nothing quite like the community carol sing in the center of Sierra Madre.
We haven't done that yet. I keep missing the time for that. St. Rita's does that, and I keep missing it. But yeah, I want to do that.
It's quite nice. And then you can go to Mother Moo's and wish Mother Moo a happy holiday.
Yeah. And yeah, just a lot of usual stuff, a lot of Christmas cookies that I have to wolf down. I was trying to be good, but then, when can I quote unquote be good, as my wife calls it, and stop celebrating Christmas?
Well,
Is it Mardi
February
Gras?
2nd.
No, I thought you said
Yeah,
Mardi Gras. I thought
it
you
pretty
said
much
Mardi Gras.
blends into Mardi. It does blend into Mardi Gras. That's true.
So you're basically telling me I have license to really party and celebrate up until Mardi Gras.
December 24th until midnight on Mardi Gras night. But then, when that hour of midnight hits and it's Ash Wednesday, Lent comes. And if you've been shaking your groove thing all the way through Christmas and Carnival, then you got to really put on the sackcloth and ashes for Lent.
Yeah.
But if you do that, however, it means that starting at Easter, you get to celebrate again.
All right, so I'm going to continue partying up, and when my wife gets angry at me, I'll cite that you're telling me to do this. All right.
You tell her that. I may never be welcome in your house again, but, it's all right. Nicer place abused by wealthier. I wouldn't worry. However, point out to her that traditionally the Christmas season per se ends with Christmas Eve.
Okay.
The night of February 1st, normally a lot of places they take the decorations down on the Epiphany, at least in terms of the Christmas tree. But before they had, and we do that because it becomes a fire hazard, really. But if you can imagine a time when you would have garlands and things like that through the house rather than Christmas trees, they would keep those decorations up until February the 2nd. Oh, sorry, until the night of February the 1st. And the Robert Herrick wrote a poem which is germane to this issue, and I think it's worth pointing out. It's called The Ceremony Upon Candlemas Eve. No, that's the other one. My mistake. There are two of them. The others is Ceremonies, plural, for Candlemas Eve. And it's really quite a nice poem because it takes you around the year and the way that they would put plants in the house. So he says, down with the rosemary and bays, down with the mistletoe. Instead of holly, now upraise the greener box for show. The holly hitherto did sway, let box now domineer, until the dancing Easter day or Easter's eve appear. Then youthful box, which now hath grace your houses to renew, grown old, surrender must his place unto the crispin yew. When yew is out, then birch comes in, and many flowers beside, both of a fresh and fragrant kin, to honor Whitsuntide, Pentecost. Green rushes then and sweetest bents, with cooler oaken boughs, come in for comely ornaments, to readorn the house. Thus times do shift, each thing his turn does hold, new things succeed as former things grow old. But his ceremony upon Candlemas Eve, much shorter, goes down with the rosemary and so, down with the bays and mistletoe, down with the holly ivy all, wherewith ye dressed the Christmas hall. That so the superstitious find not one least branch left there behind. For look, how many leaves there be, neglected there, maids, trust to me, so many goblins shall ye see. So that's Robert Herrick on Candlemas Eve. We have a long way to go to Candlemas. In fact, we will have hit our 300th show, I think, by Candlemas.
Ooh. All right.
What are we at now?
This is gonna be 296 or 297, I think.
By Candlemas, we will have arrived at our 300th show.
Wow.
That deserves something.
I I agree.
A government subsidy.
That's for sure. All right. Time for the questions.
Okay.
John sent in a bunch of questions that are really short but good. What are your thoughts on Noam Chomsky? I've wondered about him for a long time, actually, because a lot of liberals really cite him. He's kind of like this
Yes.
hardcore, like, oh yeah, yeah, defeat Noam Chomsky's articles, and then I'll really believe you. It's like one of those things, right?
Yeah. Noam Chomsky. I think he's dead. I think he's dead.
I just looked him up. He's actually not.
No,
He's
he's still
really,
with us?
really old. He's still kicking.
Well, God bless Noam Chomsky for keeping kicking that long.
Right? Is he? Maybe did I? 95 years.
Yeah, 95 years old. He remains a critic of everything and its brother. I mean, there was a fellow. There was one guy who was always being seen with in terms of advocacy and anti-war activism and so on. Yeah, William Sloane Coffin. He was one of the guys that the minister. Oh gosh, there were a whole man. This just looking at this, I feel my hair turning brown. He retired. He taught it in 2017. Oh, he's still teaching. What do you know? 95. God bless him for that. Oh well. Yeah, he was up there with William Sloane Coffin and former Assistant Secretary of State, something or other, whose name escapes me. You'd always see them in all the anti-war demonstrations and all that. But this brings up what I think of him. I mean, not much. Everyone believes he's brilliant. He's always cited as a public intellectual. To be honest with you, I haven't read a single thing he's written. So I'm not going to critique his writings.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of people. Okay, I was gonna say a lot of people cite manufacturing consent, the political economy of the mass media. I know that's the one I've come across the most, perhaps. Which is which to me, I mean, based on what I'm seeing here, I would agree with in terms of the relationship between mass media, propaganda, the corporations, blah blah blah.
It was Ramsey Clark I was trying to think of.
Okay.
The former United States Attorney General. He died in 2021. What do you know? But Ramsey Clark, Noam Chomsky, and William Sloane Coffin. You always saw those three guys together in anti-war things and so on. But I wonder. I mean, I'm not really in a position to comment intelligently on Chomsky's writings. I really am not.
Yeah.
So I won't even try. He certainly was a big deal all the while I was growing up. You always heard his name with Ramsey Clark, William Sloane Coffin, at this and that anti-war deal, anti-nuclear, and so on. Which leads me to a question. How often are there anti-war protests today on college campuses in the States?
I don't know. Probably not as many as there used to be.
How many what kind of an anti-war movement is there under Democratic leadership today?
Well, this is sort of what I kind of said. I say a lot. I don't know if I said it on the show. but it's about both parties being remarkably similar in certain
Oh yeah.
regards. The Democrats always pretend that they're anti-war, and then the Republicans always pretend that they're fiscally responsible. You know what I mean? Like, this is
Yeah,
I
yeah,
just.
yeah. Well, it's I think Ira likes to pretend he's Irish on St. Patrick's Day. He dresses up in green, he drinks Irish whiskey, eats corned beef and cabbage. He's not Irish. The Republicans and Democrats are like that.
Yeah, I mean,
The Republicans are fiscally responsible, and the Democrats are anti-war.
you go back to the Bob Hope line. A political party can't pull the wool over the American people's eyes. That's why we have two.
That's right. No one party can do that, so we have two. Yeah,
uh,
that's true. And Lord knows it works very, very well, ladies and gentlemen. I'm all for it.
you know, this got into an interesting area. This sort of because there's sort of the notion that Chomsky is just attacking a bunch of things. Like, yep, this is bad, that's bad. There's a lot of those types of people, both intellectuals and perhaps politicians. And, it's interesting, I think, in a certain sense, because it's kind of a safe thing to do. I mean, with this much bad, it's sort of easy to say, yeah, this is a problem, this is a problem, this is a problem. It's hard to promote something good. And so it's like, I feel like that's what the Republicans are kind of do now. I mean, post Obama and then now it's sort of, it's not a real agenda. I feel like it's just sort of, well, we're not going to burn the city to the ground and we're going to, you know what I mean? It's very basic stuff.
We're going to renew it.
Yeah.
We're not going to burn the city down. We're going to urban renewal it.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I just thought maybe, did you have any comments or thoughts about this in terms of like just having a positive approach versus a negative approach and just politics and
Well, I mean the problem is that as a people, as a culture, today as a civilization around the globe, the things that I think might help are so completely divorced from what the vast majority of people are aware of that, because remember, you've had several generations of people raised today not understanding anything thanks to what they're taught. I mean, I had an interesting conversation with an 18-year-old kid a couple of days ago. As a survivor of the Austrian school system, and he wasn't aware that Hitler had hated the church. And he goes, "What?" And I mentioned it in passing. That wasn't the point of my comment. I looked at him and I said, "Didn't they go deal with the Nazis at all?" He said, "Well, they dealt with what they did, but not with what their beliefs were and not what their concepts were. I mean, they hated the Jews, but other than that, they didn't really go into it." And I said, "Well, there's a good reason why they didn't go into it. And the good reason is that if they did, people might see the resemblance between the dominant ideas today in the ruling circles and what was going on with the Nazis. And I'm simply invoking the Nazis as
the
the
ultimate
vile end
evil.
all and be all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as I told the kid, I said Stalin had a much bigger body count than Hitler. Hitler had 11 million. Stalin had something like 180 million people died thanks to it. I mean, that's a lot of corpses. And yet, we are not brought up anything like the same disgust for for Stalin, than we do for Hitler.
Yeah.
And I told him there are reasons for that. I mean, in America, of course, we were allied with Stalin. So, how would it sound in our schools if we were to say, to defeat the Nazis, we allied with someone who was at least as evil and possibly worse? How would that sound?
Hmm. I always thought that Hitler was portrayed as the ultimate evil because of ethnic reasons, in terms of the ethnic groups that control Hollywood, um, compared
Oh,
to, like, I mean, Stalin wasn't, right. Like,
well, that's not entirely true. He did actually turn very anti-Semitic in the last few years of his life.
oh, Stalin did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was the famous doctor's plot, in which he accused a whole bunch of Jewish doctors of plotting to do him in. And that led to a brief anti-Semitic campaign in the Soviet Union.
But that's not really, people don't know
We don't
that
hear
for
about
whatever
it.
reason. You don't hear about that. Like, that to
No,
really.
well, no, you don't. You don't. Uh, but as I say, it was purely a question of it being a Jewish issue. Then you would hear what Stalin did with regard to the Jews from time to time.
So what is the issue?
Well, I think a big part of it is the fact that as Americans, we have to look at our history as a sort of a salvation history in which we're always the good guys. And to admit that we allied ourselves with, to defeat Hitler, we allied with something even worse than Hitler. That's very hurtful. I mean, I'm not denying that there's a certain favoritism ethnically, as you indicate, but I don't think that's the biggest piece. You know, we didn't fight Stalin. We did fight Hitler.
That's true too. Okay, the fact that we didn't fight Stalin, that makes sense.
I
Yeah.
mean, that you know how we generally feel, how we demonize our opponents, even to this day. Look at how Kaiser Wilhelm was thought of, or you know, Spain in 1898, uh, or look at what's going on now with the deconstruction of the Confederate view of history.
Hmm.
If you oppose us, you're evil. Yeah, but what if in fighting evil we allied with something worse? Don't think about it.
Yeah, here in California, it's really people get labeled extremist quite rapidly,
Oh
um,
yeah. Well,
and
and of course, extremist. Uh, my
fun.
advice to anybody who gets called an extremist: ask the person to define it. You're an extremist, really? What's an extremist?
Yeah.
Well, it's somebody who wants to, oh, I don't know, overthrow the government or something. Oh, like George Washington, you mean?
Well, see, the thing is, like, what gets my goat is it's one direction. The nature of the word implies that it's outliers on all directions, but in use,
It's
it's
in use.
not.
It's always
And
pointed in one direction.
that's what infuriates me, is that
Well,
yeah, here I'll use a concrete example. I'll use a concrete example that kind of happened, where Jordan Peterson is an extremist. He's a right wing, ultra right wing conservative. Why? Because he opposed the state mandate, a billion gender pronouns for trans
yeah.
people, right? And on that basis alone, that made him an extremist.
Which
What?
shows you, yeah,
What?
which shows you that the authorities in Canada are insane.
How come the imposition of that is not extreme? How come that's not considered extreme?
Well,
It's funny how that works.
it's what you have to do is turn it around. You know,
Yeah.
you have to throw it in their faces. Oh, I see. So reality is whatever pops out of your head.
Yeah, are the mainstream beliefs of 20 years ago now considered extreme?
Yes,
To me, that's the thing. That's the argument. Like,
and
because yeah,
that's exactly right. You know, if I mean, how many times have you heard people say about this, that, or the other thing, especially older people like myself, say, my party, my church, my this, my that, didn't abandon me. Sorry, I didn't abandon them; they abandoned me.
Okay.
You hear
Okay.
that a lot, and it's very true because if you joined a given political party, a trade union, a church, a this, a that, you joined it or you were raised in it or whatever, according to a certain set of principles.
Right.
And then the leadership of that organization, both rear ends dominant, decide they're going to change it. Well, wait a minute. That's not what I signed up for. That's not what I joined or was born into. You, you master of the universe, you decided that reality must change now because your rear end has changed.
Hmm.
Well, no. Just because you've got extra wrinkles in your brain, or maybe not enough, doesn't mean you have the power to alter reality. You are not the Spacing Guild, and this is not Dune.
All right. Um.
For that matter, you're not even the Padishah Emperor or the Bene Gesserit. You're not even the God Emperor of Dune.
You're not even the god emperor. Oh man. I okay. Anyhow.
There's not
Uh
much to be said to that one, is there? Not much of a comeback. Especially if the guy never claimed to be in the first place. I mean, who would?
Okay. Um all right, another question. Why do so many academics lean left?
Because their right legs are short.
Their right legs. Wow.
No, I guess their left legs. Yeah, their right legs would be short, so they did left. Is that right?
I
No,
don't know.
their left legs would be short. No, well, they lean left. Well, I'll tell you, there's a very good reason for that. And it's not just academics, it's in learned societies in general, it's in the arts, it's in the intellectual areas as a whole. Traditionally, although it's more and more true in Europe, as more and more Europeans and Latin America, as more and more of these people would send their supposed brightest and best to American universities, where they'd get poisoned with crap. But the reason goes back, in my humble opinion, and I've thought long and hard about this, frankly. It goes back to the very nature of American quote unquote conservatism. And I'll explain what I mean. You've often heard me say, I know, that what we call liberals, the Europeans and Latin Americans called socialists, what we call conservative, they call liberals, and what they call conservative, we don't have. Well, this is not a distinction without a difference, and it's made a very big difference for us because, with very few exceptions, although some, American conservatism, because it's for the most part really classical liberalism, Manchester School, Adam Smith, etc., has primarily been concerned with the free market and maintaining the free market and free enterprise, capitalism, etc. And for the most part, in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, into the 60s, and there were exceptions. There still are the International Collegiate Institute, the ICI, Russell Kirk's group. I mean, there have definitely been exceptions, so I don't want to give the impression it was a total null. But for the most part, uh, American quote unquote conservatives saw the struggle they were engaged in as primarily economic and political. They gave very, very little thought to defending in academia or the arts or conservation or things like that. And part of the reason for that is that liberalism is not a real set of beliefs so much as it is a So much as it is let's put it this way, it it is a set of beliefs in the sense that it predicates reality in a given sense, in a given way. But for the classical liberal, the greatest good is the greatest good of the greatest number. And that basically comes out as a purely economic issue. What allows the creation of wealth is good, what does not is bad. And the more wealth, the better, because eventually it'll spread out, a rising tide raises all ships, etc. Well, there's truth and not so much truth in that point of view. But what it ignores, because it isn't meant to address it, is anything beyond man's physical well being, his spiritual, emotional, mental well being is not addressed by classical liberalism. That is to say, by American conservatism. So, uh, those who would defend the classics in terms of teaching literature, uh, rhyme and meter and poetry, classical music versus atonal, these are not seen as parts of the fight, if you see what I
Well,
mean.
it almost seems like there are some sort of beliefs that are de facto in liberalism then, because you said that they don't have beliefs, but if everything is
They don't
physical,
have,
if everything is physical, then they would be materialists.
that's why I had to kind of restate it,
Yeah.
but they would not call themselves materialists. And many of them, in fact, consider themselves very devout people. Uh, I'm sure Adam Smith was a regular churchgoer. And the reason why I'm oohing and awing and having to, make a statement and then pull back is that it is kind of a nebulous thing. Uh,
You're
when you're sorry,
no, you're right now, because now I'm thinking of the deists, where it's like they think there is a god, but he's just not involved at all.
he's not involved, but nevertheless, we best serve him when we're nice people. uh, I mean, again, it's like the Manchester school liberals were attacked for not believing in the common good. They responded they did believe in the common good because some people becoming wealthy would inevitably result in prosperity for everyone. But see, that means that prosperity is the entirety of the common good. It leaves out the soul.
Yeah.
And it means that when conservatives with money were choosing the battles to fight, they didn't look at academia. They didn't fund academia the way liberals did, the way real liberals did, socialists and so forth. They didn't, I mean, by default in our country, anything artistic or intellectual came to be seen as the province of the left.
Hmm.
And so, it in the 60s, some conservatives, and even as early as the 50s, to be honest, some conservatives, quote unquote, that is to say, right wing liberals, uh, they began to see that there was, in fact, a problem. And of course, you had books emerge at that time, God and Man at Yale, which is what made William F. Buckley famous, was his expose of how Yale was creating an elite that was, for want of a better word, un-American.
Hmm.
But nothing was done to stop it.
Hmm.
Nothing was done effectively. I mean, similarly, and this is a complaint that the late lamented Eric von Kunert-Ledeen Eric von Kunert-Ledeen made, was that most conservative Americans were not interested in foreign affairs and foreign relations. That was something that got left to the left. So we have these, in the 1940s, actually, as early as the 1940s, there were pitched fights fought in academia about trying to maintain and hold on to traditional academic standards in the major universities. And they lost. And that was because where their opponents had all sorts of support from outside, the defenders of the good, the true, and the beautiful in places like Harvard, who were admittedly very limited people. In other words, they weren't Catholic, they were basically in love of academe for its own sake. But nevertheless, it's a lot better than what we have now. They had no outside allies, and so they were doomed to defeat. Through the 50s, you had incoming personnel, and then the 60s, everything came to a head and exploded. And ever since then, to be an intellectual in America is to be a leftist. To be an academic, for the most part, is to be a Marxist. And if you looked at so many interesting things that arose in our country from the 60s and 70s, like the Renaissance Fair, they came from the left. Did you know the first Renaissance Fair, and that's an institution I love, but the very first one, I think first several, was actually a fundraiser for KPFK radio?
Wow. No.
And mind you, I love the Renaissance Fair, but stop and think about it. It was not conservatives doing that kind of thing. It was left to the left. It's the same with the revels. It's the same with all sorts of living history deals. Right wingers aren't doing them. They were left by default.
This is so interesting. It's very reminiscent of It reminds me actually of a book I just finished, The Introduction to the Science of Mental Health by Father Ripperger. I don't know if I said this on the show or not, but I might have said it to you, where Father Ripperger explains there's a huge problem in psychology, which is, it treats the human being like an animal. Like an animal. It doesn't account for the soul. It doesn't account for the will. And because it treats humans as a brute, there's this huge gap there. There's this tremendous deficiency. And one of the reasons why, it's sort of, he said it should be both philosophical and sort of, what is it? Physical science, kind of.
Yeah.
But to be philosophical, to be theological, is to sort of, it's not as attractive. You're sort of discredited, right? It's not a highly regarded area.
No.
And so I thought that was so interesting because that sort of mimics like everything else you've kind of talked about in terms of intellectual life and thought and belief is well, we don't go there.
No, we don't. And again, another couple of examples. The struggles to protect historic houses or the local waterfall or wooded area. Who does that?
Yeah.
Now, in Europe, traditionally, that too was the province of the right, but not America.
Yeah, this harkens back to another thing that you said that was so interesting on the show, which was, but I never fully understood what it looks like, which was sort of the integration between the spiritual and the physical in the academic life during medieval times, where there wasn't this sort of split between things like we're doing now between the spiritual and the physical. But what I never understood was what that actually looked like for the physical sciences.
Well, this will sound a little weird, but you kind of, in a way, you kind of see it with alchemy, in the sense that, and mind you, I'm not an expert on alchemy, and I know that the people will be jumping up and down that I'm favoring alchemy. Yeah, exactly. The waves of the future. Yeah. But the thing is, you look at what the alchemists attempted to do, and again, this was our early experimentation in chemistry. They often, people like Roger Bacon accompanied their particular experiments and so on with particular prayers. Now, did they achieve the amazing? Did they turn base metal into gold, as a few are claimed to have actually succeeded in doing? I don't know. What I do know is this. What I know is that the gross test color project at the University of Durham in England, which is a fascinating experiment. What they did was they took a number of medieval scientific texts from people like Robert Grosseteste, Roger Bacon, etc. People who were very devout, very pious, and that is what powered their scientific inquiries. And they had their manuscripts translated by the best Latinists they could find, and then had the results given to the best scientists of whatever field they could find. And in every case, the scientists were astonished by how much Grosseteste, Bacon, etc., knew of a given topic. How could they possibly have known what they knew? Well, I don't know. I don't know how they knew what they knew, Doctor. And you know what? I don't have to. It's your problem, not mine. Now, what we do know, uh, and what we can't help but wonder, if the Protestant revolt had not occurred, what would our civilization be like today? We can't know. We can't know what it would have been like if we hadn't have had the revolt, if we'd had continued religious unity, if we hadn't had the Enlightenment. We can't know what the world would be like. But it's funny. I was recently asked about the Inquisition, uh, and I said, well, I was against it because it failed. And the guy looked at me and said, huh, what? I said, think of the world we live in today, where the Catholic faith is a joke, and where infants and the elderly and the sick are routinely murdered as part of the law of the land. We are living in precisely what the Inquisition tried to prevent, and failed in doing so.
Wow.
It succeeded for a time, which is why Spain and Portugal and Italy didn't have the horrible civil wars the countries without the Inquisition, like France and England and Germany and Scotland and Ireland had. So they didn't have those bloody civil wars. And it's true they also had a lot of shepherds executed for bestiality and underground. I guess that was probably a bad thing, or a good thing, or something. I don't know. But by and large, the Inquisition was a failure. And we live in precisely the kind of dystopia that medieval intellectuals were afraid of. Something to think about. We're living in what for them was our version of their version of 1984, or I could imagine somebody like Roger Bacon coming to the present, going back and writing a manuscript, because people like Blessed Raymond Lowe wrote novels writing a manuscript, something like Heresyland, a nightmare. Can you imagine how we would look to them with our drones murdering people at at a wedding party?
Hmm.
Wouldn't that be something? Wouldn't they think of us as brave and heroic?
Well, from their primitive state, they can't see
Oh,
our
yes, I do.
advanced nature and understand it.
No, they can't. It's so wonderful. Get ourselves. Anyway, enough of this falderal. What's the next question? I don't even remember
That's
what
it.
I just
That
answered.
that's it. That was too epic of a segment. We are out of time. We are out of time. Everyone's gonna enjoy this. That was an epic segment, Charles. I'm gonna try to get in front of as many eyes as possible. We're done. Your job is finished. For the
No, it's not.
pre-show.
I've got the real show to do.
Oh, that's true. All
This
right.
is only the pre-show. Just you think these people, look at them nibbling nuts. I don't believe it. The guy brought his own champagne bottle. Sir, the sign said only drinks provided. Got that? You don't bring your own champagne bottle into the studio. Don't think we're not watching. We are. Tyrone, yeah. I don't care if. Uh, all right, so he's a penthouse employee. All right, fine.
It's
Can I have Tyrone take the drink from him?
I don't
Your
know.
call, Chief.
Look at he can bring in Charles. Okay, that's what you said isn't strictly true. Okay, you can bring your champagne. It's fine, but there's a $200 corkage fee. So.
All right, Tyrone. Never mind what I said. Just collect the fee. All right, sir. Thank you very much. Wait a minute. Hold it up. It's Verve Clicquot. I'll tell you what. I will. You know what? Send some of that Verve Clicquot this way after the broadcast. You can keep 50, 150, Tyrone.
There you go.
All right. This is how we settle things at the old tower, ladies and gentlemen.
That's right. All right. Stay tuned for the full episode, everyone. Coming right at you.
And Happy New Year.